In the shadows of San Salvador, the silence of the truce is broken by the president's words. As the sun sets over the alleyways, gang members tremble, wondering if peace will collapse on the streets they once promised to dominate. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe. It's free. Now let's begin. President Nayib Bukele of El Salvador has launched intense measures against gangs in the country, including the construction of a mega prison. The gang members, known as mareros, are notorious for their frequent use of high-caliber weapons in committing violent crimes. Among the most commonly used weapons are pistols, shotguns, and assault rifles like the AK-47 and M16. In addition to firearms, they also resort to bladed weapons, such as knives and machetes in their criminal activities. During their attacks, the gang members are often extremely violent and lethal. They use firearms to repeatedly shoot their victims, aiming at both the body and the head to ensure they eliminate them. This brutality extends to their use of bladed weapons, where they do not hesitate to inflict fatal wounds, sometimes even dismembering those they attack. Their harsh and direct approach seeks to confront decades of gang violence that have severely affected the nation, making it one of the most dangerous in the world. Bukele, a young and dynamic leader who took office in 2019, has promised a radical change to free Salvadorans from constant fear. President Bukele of El Salvador has reaffirmed his tough stance against the gangs with a shocking message. He threatened to cut off food supplies to imprisoned gang members if they continued with violence. During a graduation ceremony for new police officers and soldiers, he warned that he would suspend all meals in the prisons if the gangs unleashed more crimes. Bukele urged the gang members to surrender peacefully, assuring them of at least 2 meals a day in prison. These measures, which include reducing meals to 2 per day and removing mattresses, have sparked international concern, especially among human rights groups. Despite the criticism, Bukele defends his approach as necessary to achieve peace in his country, gaining both support and criticism alike. Nayib Bukele, before standing out in politics, was a successful and talented businessman in advertising, influenced by his father, Armando Bukele Catan, a prominent businessman in the Muslim community of El Salvador. He founded an advertising company known for its creativity and strategy, skills he later applied to his political career. In 2011, he joined the FMLN and was elected mayor of Nuevo Cuscatlan in 2012, becoming the youngest mayor in the country. During his tenure, he launched educational programs and improved infrastructure, focusing on reducing the appeal of gangs through educational and development opportunities. In August 2014, Nayib Bukele announced his candidacy for the mayoralty of San Salvador in the 2015 elections, backed by the FMLN and with slogans such as, "We have to change history," and "Together, we will move forward." He won the election on March 1, 2015, with 50.38% of the votes and took office. As mayor, he implemented projects to revitalize the city and fight crime, such as the installation of surveillance cameras, city lighting, and scholarship programs for young people. However, his relationship with the FMLN deteriorated due to internal conflicts and criticism. His notable campaigns included San Salvador 100% illuminated, and the renovation of historic areas such as Plaza Gerardo Barrios. He was expelled from the FMLN in 2017 after accusations of defamatory acts against the party. Despite this, Bukele maintained his popularity, and in October 2017 he announced his presidential candidacy for 2019 with the Nuevas Ideas Party. His campaign focused on fighting corruption, creating jobs, and reducing crime, using social media to connect directly with voters and build a strong support base. On February 3, 2019, Nayib Bukele won El Salvador's presidential election with 53.10% of the vote, becoming the first president since 1984 not affiliated with either the Arena or FMLN parties. From the beginning of his presidency, Bukele applied aggressive tactics to combat gang violence, believing that a firm approach was necessary to achieve peace in the country. In April 2020, he launched a major offensive against gangs after a surge in violence, ordering the military to use lethal force and releasing images of imprisoned gang members to send an intimidating message. In March 2022, facing another wave of violence with 87 deaths attributed to gangs like MS-13 and 18th Street, Bukele declared a state of emergency, known locally as the regime of exception. This granted him broad powers to combat gangs, suspending constitutional rights and allowing detentions without a court order. Over the next 20 months, more than 77,000 arrests were made, although many were criticized for lacking solid evidence and legal representation. Despite the criticism, these measures significantly reduced gang activity in El Salvador. Nayib Bukele implemented strategies to dismantle the power structure of gangs in El Salvador. His offensive included isolating gang leaders to cut off communications from prison and prevent reprisals, weakening their organization. He introduced new laws for mass trials, allowing up to 900 simultaneous prosecutions, and increasing the maximum prison sentence for gang leaders to 60 years. The military deployed thousands of soldiers, especially in rural areas suspected of being gang hideouts. In August 2023, after a gang ambush in Cabañas, Bukele ordered the deployment of 7,000 soldiers and 1,000 police officers to secure the area and make arrests. If you're enjoying this video, make sure to subscribe for more similar content and give it a like to support us. Intensive surveillance measures, such as cameras and intelligence operations, were implemented to dismantle gang operations and prevent their reorganization. Nayib Bukele has received criticism from human rights organizations for his tough stance against gangs in El Salvador. However, he enjoys widespread support from the Salvadoran population, exhausted by decades of gang violence, who see these measures as necessary to restore public safety and order. The crackdown has resulted in a significant reduction in the country's homicide rate, with Bukele aiming to further reduce it to 2.2 per 100,000 inhabitants in 2023, compared to 103 per 100,000 in 2020-2015. Doubts persist about the long-term sustainability of this strategy, given the deeply rooted problem of gang violence in El Salvador, which traces back to the Salvadoran Civil War. This conflict, which lasted from 1979 to 1992, was fueled by deep social and economic inequalities in the country. The war began with a military coup to suppress protests and demands for reforms, triggering a conflict between the government and the FMLN, supported by guerrilla groups seeking justice and equality. In the 1980s, many Salvadorans migrated to Los Angeles in search of safety but faced marginalization and gang violence. This led to the formation of the Mara Salvatrucha, MS-13, as initial protection among Salvadorans. Under the leadership of Ernesto Deras, a former Salvadoran soldier, MS-13 adopted military discipline and expanded into criminal activities such as drug trafficking and extortion. The 18th Street Gang, Barrio 18, was established in Los Angeles in the 1960s by youths who were not accepted into Hispanic gangs. The rivalry between MS-13 and Barrio 18 shifted to El Salvador after the Civil War, 1992. Exacerbated by U.S. deportation policies targeting Salvadorans involved in gangs. Under Nayib Bukele since 2019, a megaprison was inaugurated to combat gang violence, which has been denounced for inhumane conditions and lack of rehabilitation. Amnesty International and others have criticized the high number of arrests, deaths in custody, and disappearances while the government intensifies its campaign against gangs, raising concerns about civil rights and human dignity. The rivalry between MS-13 and the 18th Street Gang became a central aspect of gang culture in Los Angeles. After the Salvadoran Civil War ended in 1992 with the signing of the Chapultepec Peace Accords in Mexico City, negotiated with the help of the United Nations, this rivalry shifted to El Salvador. These accords introduced significant reforms, such as political democratization, restructuring of the military, and the protection of human rights, marking a milestone by putting an end to years of brutal conflict and establishing the foundation for peace and recovery. However, the strict immigration and deportation policies of the United States led to the repatriation of many Salvadorans, including those with gang affiliations, exacerbating social and economic problems in a country already struggling with an economic crisis. Gangs like MS-13 and 18th Street found a favorable environment in this challenging context, recruiting disaffected youth and expanding their criminal operations, which included drug trafficking, extortion, and territorial control through extreme violence. The influence of these gangs transcended the borders of El Salvador, turning them into transnational entities, with decentralized structures that complicated efforts by security forces to combat them. Policies such as Mano Dura, implemented in 2003 by President Francisco Flores, and Super Mano Dura, in 2006 under the administration of Antonio Saca, aimed to reduce crime through aggressive raids and harsher penalties, though these policies were criticized for their limited effectiveness and their implications on human rights. Brief attempts at truces between gangs, such as the one that occurred between 2012 and 2014, showed a temporary decrease in homicides, but violence soon resurfaced with force. The Mara Salvatrucha, known as MS-13 or Mara, is an international criminal gang network whose activities include violence, drug trafficking, extortion, arms smuggling, kidnapping, robbery, and contract killings. Originating in Los Angeles, California, it has expanded its presence to other regions such as the United States, Canada, Mexico, and several nations in Central America and Europe, particularly Italy, Portugal, and Spain, composed mostly of Central American immigrants such as Salvadorans, Guatemalans, and Hondurans. MS-13 operates in urban and suburban areas, with local groups called cliques, mainly in Central America. Members of Mara Salvatrucha are identified by their extensive tattoos, which cover their bodies, including their faces, and by using a unique sign language. They are known for their brutality and follow an internal moral code that involves extremely cruel acts of revenge. The violence of these members, known as mareros, led them to be recruited by the Sinaloa criminal organization, led by Joaquin Guzman Loera, to receive weapons training and face the Gulf organization, Los Zetas, in a war that affected the southern U.S. border. The presence of the Mara Salvatrucha is significant in Central America, partly due to the mass deportations of Central American criminals from the United States back to their countries of origin. In the United States, their activities attracted the attention of the FBI and the DEA, which carried out operations to detain and deport thousands of members of the Mara Salvatrucha. During the pandemic, and with the election of President Nayib Bukele, this gang experienced a rapid decline, with many of its members being arrested or expelled from the country. The Mara Salvatrucha, known as MS-13, has its origins in the migration of Salvadorans to the United States, motivated in part by the mistreatment and discrimination they faced from other communities, including Mexicans and African Americans. This hostile environment led a group of Salvadorans to band together and form this gang, which has gained a reputation for being one of the most violent worldwide. MS-13 has established intense rivalries with other gangs, such as Barrio 18, the Mexican Mafia, Latin Kings, Bloods, and Crips, resulting in violent and deadly episodes over the years. The presence of MS-13 has spread not only throughout the United States, but also to Central American countries like Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras, as well as parts of Mexico and European countries such as Italy, Portugal, and Spain. Recruitment into gangs, including MS-13, is driven by various social and family problems, such as abandonment, mistreatment, and abuse. Many young people joined these gangs between the ages of 12 and 21 in search of support and identity, often being coerced due to fear of retaliation. The organizational structure of MS-13 is based on cliques or cells, which control specific territories in a territorial and violent manner. They are known for being brutally aggressive toward those who invade their areas, even with outsiders who venture into their domains. MS-13 members are recognizable by their walking style, distinctive clothing, and the use of their own sign language and oral codes. Tattoos play a crucial role as symbols of loyalty and belonging to the gang, each carrying specific meanings within the gang's culture. Leaving MS-13 is considered extremely difficult, as many members perceive death as the only way out. This reality reflects the severity of the commitment and the inherent violence in gangs like MS-13, which continue to pose a significant challenge for authorities and affected communities in both America and Europe. It is uncommon for them to engage in hand-to-hand combat, preferring the quick and lethal use of firearms or knives. In addition to using weapons to commit violent acts, gang members use them for smuggling, selling, and distributing within their own groups. This use of weapons not only perpetuates violence in the communities where they operate, but also contributes to the escalation of conflicts and increased insecurity. If you've made it this far and enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like, subscribe to our channel, and turn on the notification bell to receive updates on future videos on YouTube. Also, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments.